Hello. Now that we are finally into the school year, we're going to pivot a little bit over here at Sophia Homeschool. And instead of talking so much about the workshops and the master classes that we do continue to run and we're still helping parents in those ways, now we're going to focus a little bit more on those actual skills with that we teach in regard to teacher training for homeschool parents, and what give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what it is you can be, the skills you can be building and the different approaches that you can take in your homeschool as you begin to teach your children at home. So one of the first questions that I often get about homeschooling, and especially right now while so many parents are distance learning, which by the way is not homeschooling. It's a very, very different thing than homeschooling. When you're distance learning, you're doing things that are entirely different than what you would be doing in an actual homeschool. But I'm being asked all the time, well, what should my pre-K child or kindergartner or first grader be learning right now? What are the important things for this child in this age range, pre-K through first or second grade? And then another component to that is, how do I homeschool children of multiple ages, especially when I have a toddler in the house? What do I do with that toddler or that preschool age child when I'm trying to teach the older child? So let's deal with all of that right here, right now. And I think that the solution to both questions is going to be very much the same. So what do we teach a child this age, preschool through about first or second grade? Well, I'll say that one of the things that you should not be teaching a child this in this time frame goes against conventional wisdom right now. We should not be teaching or pushing early childhood reading. More and more evidence, more and more papers, research papers, psychological reports, and so forth are coming out showing definitively that pushing early childhood reading is causing a lot of damage. And the reason it's causing so much damage is because the brain just isn't ready in most children. Some children are unusual and they're ready to read at about age 4 or 5, but that is not the standard, it's the exception. So just like you can't take a child who is not yet rolling over and try to sit them up, right? If a child is not developmentally ready to do a task, then they are not capable of doing that task when it comes to these tasks in human development. So, you wouldn't take this child who's just kind of laying there, is not able to roll over, the infant, and sit them up and say, I can't get this child to learn to sit up. Well, the same thing happens when you're trying to get a 4-year-old to read, and they're not developmentally ready for it yet. My 6-year-old, poor bless her heart, she had ended up with an abscess above her front tooth, and they had to prematurely pull her front tooth. And poor thing, she was not developmentally ready for her grown-up teeth to come in yet. So she went around for about a year missing a front tooth. And there was nothing that we could do to help her tooth come in when it just wasn't ready to come in yet. And that is very much the same thing with reading. Sometimes, yes, you can actually get a young child to read by really, really, really pushing it. But at what cost? The cost is that it's going to become a battle and a struggle, a frustration, and you're going to take away all the joy that reading should be. The love of reading that a child should have is going to be just taken away from them because of the unnecessary struggle that they are going to have to go through to try to please you in learning how to read before they're ready, before they're developmentally ready. Also, you can teach in 3 months when a child is ready. When a child is ready to read, they can just launch into reading when they're developmentally ready. And it'll take 3 months painless, and then they're excited because it's coming on naturally. They're enjoying it. They're launching into this, and then they just can't put books down. Instead of taking years when you start too soon, pushing, early childhood reading, it becomes a frustration. And by the time they are 6 years old, they have seen their peers. Some of them have gotten that reading before them. They have seemed to have a much easier time reading, and this precious little 4, 5, 6-year-old now has a complex and believes that they are stupid, that they're a bad student. And they go through the rest of their education believing this about themselves. So these are some of the reasons that pushing early childhood reading is damaging. And as a homeschool parent, you should avoid pushing that early childhood reading. Now, that's not to say that if you have a 4-year-old who's all of a sudden very, very interested in reading, that you shouldn't allow that to be in their environment and give them the opportunity. But if at all they lose interest and walk away from it, let it happen. Just wait. Just wait for it to come on naturally. The school system likes to push early childhood reading because they can measure that kind of success. They can score it, they can grade it, and it reflects well on the teachers. What they can't measure is their psychological well-being, their emotional wholeness. That's what can't be measured. And this is really what a child at this age range should be learning. The needs of a small child are particularly met through free, unstructured play. This is what science has been telling us over and over again for at least 100 years. You know, the Wright brothers, their father was a huge believer in the benefit of play. And the result is that they were able to break the code into flight, right? Because they developed this curiosity, this ability to tinker with things and explore and ask questions. So play is really important, especially for a child at this age range. And I'm talking about unstructured, free play. They need to be, at this time, they need to be developing their fine motor skills. They need to be developing their hand strength. So important for writing later and all of the other academic components. They need to be practicing their gross motor skills. You know, we have so many students now who need therapy through OT, and they need help with executive function. They need help with visual memory. They need help with all of these things because they didn't get this gross motor skill activity, this big play, monkey bars, jungle gyms, balance beams. These are big, gross motor skill play that the children at this age need, and it translates into academic skills by the time they reach 2nd grade and onward. If they don't have this foundation in this fine motor skill and gross motor skill, their academics are going to suffer terribly. And you're going to spend thousands of dollars on therapies that maybe we can help that to not be such a bad deficit if we get them practicing out on the playground, playing with the dog, swimming in the swimming pool, building blanket forts, scooping, pouring, measuring, using scissors. This is what a child about 4-year-olds really should be practicing, these fine motor skills, by using scissors. You take a little strip of construction paper, draw lines on it about a 1/2 inch apart, and you give them a little bucket that they have to cut the little slices of paper into. And they get really, really good at that. Give them a piece of construction paper with a spiral on it and teach them to cut around the spiral. This is wonderful, wonderful fine motor skill for a child, and it's going to be practicing their hand strength for writing. Give them chunky puzzle pieces and have them trace the puzzle pieces. Encourage drawing, scribbling. You know, drawing Writing, handwriting develops in the same way that a baby's speech develops. At first, you have a baby who is just making noise. They're practicing their volume, they're practicing their tone, they're practicing their inflection, and then that babbling turns into more vowel sounds, and then the vowel sounds turn into actual words, ma, 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 da, 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 and the child still doesn't know yet that those sounds translate into actual meanings, have meaning associated with those sounds. And in the same way, we have a child who begins to scribble, and they might be holding a crayon with full fist, and they're scribbling, and soon their hand begins to develop until they're getting more and more of a real pencil grip, and then their scribbles begin to take more form: circles, boxes, straight lines, X's, triangles. A triangle's a very advanced skill for a child to master. It actually it requires the two hemispheres cooperating together to get a child to make an X or a triangle. So they begin to develop this, and soon they begin to be able to make letters, and it's after that the brain starts to recognize that there is a sound associated with the letter. So you have to let that scribbling, you have to let that motor skill begin to develop. It's critical for getting that information into the brain. So hand strength, a fine motor skill. Play-Doh is great for hand strength, by the way. Lots of Play-Doh work. So the fine motor skills, the gross motor skills. What else should a child be learning at this age, between 4 years old to about 6 years old? They also need to be learning grace and courtesy. It's very important for a child to be able to read facial expressions, to be able to understand social cues, to be able to speak up for themselves. No, this is my work, please walk away. Right? No, this is my food, please let me have it. All right? To be able to advocate for themselves, to be able to say, I don't like that, please stop. Or to be able to actually say to another child, hi, my name is Nancy. Right? To have these grace and courtesies, very, very important for social development, social intelligence, right? This is a form of intelligence. And again, the schools can't grade it, can't measure it, but it's important, and it's really important, and it translates into academic proficiency when a child can express themselves in an essay, when a child can reason through an arithmetic problem. It really comes out of these early lessons that are being learned in these preschool years, and it's met in this free play. It's met in having the parent instruct them in social environments of what to do and how to do it. And also, what is it? Children this age, from very, very young until about age 6, they are very interested in what things are. They want to know the names of everything. They're trying to understand the world around them. And they want definitions of things. They want to know what things are. Everything. And if you are just talking about everything in the world around you and what it is, you are meeting their needs, because soon they're going to be asked to write book reports and papers and when they get up into 3rd, 4th grade. And if they don't have a really great understanding of the world around them, they won't have anything at all to write about. So nature walks, identify birds and plants, take them out and pick up bugs. These are all wonderful things. Get them a world atlas that you can look through and talk about it. When you're at the grocery store, talk about everything around you. This meets the child's needs in such a much, much, much better way than any textbook or any other curriculum could meet. So what is it? The names of everything, identify it all. Also give them independence. A child this age needs to be able to do it himself. He'll say to you, he'll tell you all the time, the 2-year-old will say all the time, me do it myself, me do myself. They want to zip up their own jacket. They want to put on their own seatbelt. They want to open their own package. They want to do everything that they can do. Sometimes you even have a potty trainer who wants to do his own diaper. You're like, whoa, hey God, some things mommy still needs to do. And you have this craving for independence, and as much as you can give him that independence, that more capable he will be when he needs to solve problems academically, right? By the time a child is 3 or 4 years old, he's already learned that, no, I'm not allowed to, mommy does it all. He no longer has the ability to persevere through problem solving that's necessary for academics. So you have to allow as much independence. Give him bowls that are put down low so he can fix his own cereal. And if he spills, be patient with the mistakes, but let him learn. Let him make the mistakes. Let him do it himself as much as he can. This is what a child between 4 and 6 years old needs to be learning. So if you're wondering, will my child fall behind if they're 5 years old and they're not in school right now? If we are working on these things, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, hand strength, grace and courtesy, naming everything, telling him what everything is, and giving him as much independence as he possibly can have, he's going to have a very, very, very solid foundation, and he will be ready for school in first, second grade, so much better equipped than other students his age who have not had this. But there's one more thing that actually is, I've saved it for last, not because it's not important, but because it is the most important thing. The most important thing is their concentration. We should begin stretching their concentration from the time they are newborns. And if we didn't get to them by the time they were newborn, don't worry. There's still time. There's still plenty of time to help this child to expand their ability to concentrate for long periods of time. Now, this ability to concentrate is a very, very physical ability. And like any muscle, it needs to be strengthened. It needs to be worked in order for the child to be good at it. So what happens when a child is a very little child in the crib, we barge in and we just scoop them up out of the crib, and we don't stop and look and to see if they are, studying their fingers. And if they're studying their fingers in their crib and playing, we should hold back and not break that concentration until he looks away, and then we move in and pick him up. And the same thing with a child who might be playing with blocks. Playing with blocks in the family. We don't rush in and say, come on, it's time to go. We have to hurry up. Get your shoes on. Come on, let's go. I'm guilty of this. I'm very, very guilty of this. It's a hard discipline for a parent to never, ever barge into a room talking. Stop and look, see what the child is doing, and wait for that concentration to break naturally before you go in and break their concentration. This will help them to be lengthening that concentration span. We have parents always complaining about their child who has ADD or ADHD. And while this is a real and true learning disability, it is actually a symptom of many learning disabilities. So just like a sore throat or a cough might be a symptom of many illnesses, it is not the illness. Same with ADD. It is a symptom of many other learning deficiency. It could be a vision problem. It could be an issue with visual memory. It could be an issue with auditory processing. It could be an issue with dyslexia. There are so many things that would cause a child to have their concentration constantly broken, and to have a hard time lengthening that concentration. So we need to really work on this as parents. If there really seems to be a physical barrier to them concentrating, we need to start investigating why. Why is this? But for most children, their concentration has already been repeatedly broken from the time they were newborns, just because we didn't know as parents. We didn't know we were breaking that really important concentration when we burst into a room and interrupted them. And so we need to build it back up. And so we build it back up by having them sit down and say, okay, say you have a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old is very demanding, and you're trying to work with the 3rd grader, and the 4-year-old is demanding your attention constantly because they don't have any attention span, and they need to be constantly entertained. So you would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to sit you down right here. I'm going to give you this puzzle. You go ahead and you build this puzzle, but don't get me until this puzzle is done. I want to see when this puzzle is all the way done. Okay? And so I'll be back. I'm going to go ahead and set this timer here. I'm going to set it for 3 minutes. And when this timer goes off, then you can get me if your puzzle is done, but you can't get me before. All right? And if you can do that, then you offer some kind of incentive or reward or something, or maybe your reward is simply that you're just so impressed and so happy to see that what he's done, that he was able to work. And then you keep making that 3 minutes, you make it 5, you make it 10, you make it 15, you build up as long as the child can go doing some kind of creative work. And by this, you are encouraging him to stay concentrated. Now, one of the worst things, unfortunately, very tragically right now this year, the worst thing for concentration is distance learning, online learning. We have all these little boxes and all these students and all their little antics and all of their accidental unmiked bumps and the things that are going on in the house behind them, or a movie where your images on a screen movie or tablet or video game, the images are changing every couple of seconds, and that attention is constantly being broken, and you are shortening the attention span. It's also very terrible for those fine and gross motor skills, for grace and courtesy, for independence, for all of these things which a child at this age should be learning is actually being damaged by the tactics that our education system is taking right now for the child preschool through about 1st grade. Now, the question that we dealt with earlier in at the very beginning of this live was, what do you do when you have that older child and the younger one is in the way? You're teaching multiple aids, and particularly with the toddler. Well, right there when we talked about concentration, that's where we got into that. Because when you have successfully built the younger child's ability to work on their own, you have created the solution for you having that time to work with the older child. And while you were doing that, saying to the younger one, I'm not available to you now. I am working with your older sister, and I'm not available to you now. You are giving the younger child what he actually needs more than anything else, is that ability to concentrate, to have a long span, to go deep in his own work and his own mind, to concentrate on what he is doing and make sure it's something constructive, fine motor skills, the scissors or the drawing or the stamps, give him rubber stamps that he can be stamping, or stickers he can be putting on. These are fine motor skills, feeds his needs very well. Have him put a big circle on the ground. You can do it with chalk, you can do it with masking tape, and big circle the size of the room, and have him walk on the line. Gross motor skills. Whatever you can have him doing to strengthen those fine motor skills and gross motor skills and increase that concentration, and also the grace and courtesy that you don't interrupt me while I'm working with your older sibling. These are all things that the child really, really, really needs. So give him those things that he really, really, really needs. And also give him the reassurance that when I'm done working with your older sister, I will then work alone with you. And he will begin to have confidence in that he can wait patiently because you will give him your attention, because you always do. You always keep that promise to him. Now, while we're on the subject of concentration, I want to give you move into just a little bit off topic here and show you what it looks like when you get into the older grades. We continue to work on that concentration ability all the way through the school years. In fact, I still need to put myself through exercises to prolong my concentration skills. We all do. This should be a muscle we work on throughout our lives. How long can we concentrate on something? This is a matter of stamina. So my 5th grader yesterday worked through his front page in his arithmetic book, and he thought he was done because he had worked on the new concept. He had learned a new concept and he had practiced it, and so he was done. And I said to him, well, that was good enough last year, but this year, this math book serves 2 purposes. The first page is the new math concept and the ability to practice it, and the second page practices your stamina. And he looked at me like I said, no way, I have to do 2 pages this time. Yes, you have to do 2 pages because what happens is when you think about, you can do pull-ups on a bar, right? And you do the first one and you do it strong. And you do number 5 and you're starting to shake, right? And so that's the stamina. You need to keep going. You need to strengthen that stamina. Now, as you get older in grades, not only are you doing it longer and longer, but you're doing it with more and more complicated material. You are not just doing ABCs, you're doing fractions. And so the concepts of what you're working with become more and more difficult. This is like doing your pull-ups with a pack of weights on your back. This gets serious. And this means that you're really exercising that. You're really strengthening your stamina, and your stamina, endurance, and your concentration. You are purposefully working out. So that's what we do as the children get older. We say, that's fine that you can do that, but can you do that when you're tired? So let's practice that and let's move into that, because these are things that really help us to think and to be actually successful in life. I hope that's been helpful to you. This is just a sneak peek of some of the things that we teach over at the Foundations of Homeschooling Masterclass, and the other things that all the products and services that we give at Sophia Homeschool. And if you like what you see here, reach out, sign up for a consultation, and we'll see if we can help your homeschool be the homeschool of your dreams.